Next on my list is X-Men 2. Okay, calm down, X-Men people. Calm down. I don't hate this movie. This is movies that I hate, or at least think are overrated. I don't hate this film. I actually do like it, but I do think it's overrated, and I do have a very different opinion than most, because most people consider this to be the best X-Men film. I actually consider it to be the worst. At least talking about the original three. X-Men First Class and everything, I know technically it's part of the same series, but to me, it's part of a different series. But out of the first three, I actually thought this was the worst one. To be perfectly fair, though, I haven't really read the comics, and I know most people who do like X-Men 2 say that it's the most like the comics. I wouldn't know. And I think that's probably part of the reason why I like the first one so much, because in the first one, everything was new to me. Like, Wolverine was a character I had heard about, but I'd never really seen before. You know, Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters was completely new to me. Magneto, completely new to me. You know, so I was kind of experiencing all this stuff for the first time, and I think that's why I found it so interesting. And yeah, it is a little, like, boring. Like, the story is kind of simplistic, and they're doing a lot of setup and everything, but you expect that in the first film. When the second one came out, I kind of felt it was the same thing, that everything is just being set up. Not a whole lot is really happening. It just felt like another setup film, which is actually why I like the third one, because in the third one, I mean, lines are drawn, sides are chosen, battles happen, lives are lost, shit goes down. But yet that's not the one no one likes. I don't get it. But anyways, in the second one, I felt it was another setup film. I felt it kind of focused a little too much on Wolverine again. The first one I felt was mainly focused on Wolverine, and the second one I felt it was mainly focused on Wolverine. They're talking about his origin story, which to me was really pointless because I don't think it's official yet, but I know they were at least talking about doing Wolverine like his own movie, you know, his own origin story. So I was thinking like, okay, we've already learned quite a bit about him in the first one. He's gonna get his own movie later. Why can't we learn about someone else? I mean, I'm sure Wolverine is not the only interesting X-Men. I also felt the ending was really drawn out, you know, because first you have Stryker trying to get Xavier to like kill all the mutants, and then you have Magneto trying to get Xavier to kill all the humans, and just the whole sequence I just thought was really drawn out, really longer than it needed to be. And that little girl was so annoying, you know. Find all the mutants. Find all of them. We need to find them all. Find all the mutants. Find them all. She sounded like a psychotic Pokemon or something.
Catch 'em all. Gotta catch 'em all. Pokemon.
But once again, I don't hate this film because there still was some good things in there, you know. I really like Colossus, you know, even though he didn't really do much in this film, somehow he just seems so badass. I also really like the scene where Wolverine is in the school and, you know, Stryker tries to break in, and, you know, Wolverine like just goes berserker and like kicks everyone's ass. Nightcrawler was really awesome. So there still is some good things in this movie, and I still do overall like it. I just don't think it was as good as the other two. Alright, so the next on my list is Aliens. Now, a good friend of mine, this is one of his favorite movies, so I'm going to try not to bag on it too much. But when James Cameron was doing this, he said that he didn't want to do a horror film because he realized what Ridley Scott did was a one-trick pony and that it wasn't going to work as a horror film again. And I totally agree with that. So why did he use the same formula? Because both movies start off really slow. You know, there's not really much going on. There's like these little subtle things that kind of hint that something is going to happen. But for probably about the first hour, maybe even longer, of both films, not much really happens, which kind of gets you to let your guard down, and then they like throw a bunch of stuff at you at the end, which I think worked really well in the first one, because again, the first one was a horror film, and things are scarier when they catch you off guard. I don't really think the same thing applies with action, and even if you want to try to argue that it does, did you really not see this coming? I mean, the first time, yeah, we don't know what this is a new thing, we don't know what's going to happen, but the second time around, did you really not think that aliens were going to show up and that these people were going to have to fight for their lives? Did you really not see that coming? So with the first one, I do feel it was kind of boring in the beginning, but it was worth it because it had a really great payoff at the end. Aliens, I really felt was just boring. There is some action stuff at the end, but it's not really worth the wait. Alright, last one here. This is the big one. The one that I just hate the most, which is Indiana Jones. I know. Hey, the movie sucked, alright? It's not my freaking fault. Now, once again, to be perfectly fair, I have not seen all 4 Indiana Jones movies. I have seen the first one, I have seen the third one, and I have seen the 4th one. That may seem a little weird, but that's the way it happened. I hate all of them equally. I know a lot of people think that the 4th one is the worst one. I actually don't. I actually thought they all sucked equally. Now, when I do this review, I'm mainly going to be talking about the first one, simply because that seems to be the one that most people consider to be the best, and even if it's not, it's still definitely the first one. However, all the problems I'm about to list off, I do think apply to all 3 films. But again, just for the sake of time and organization and everything like that, I'm mainly just going to be talking about the first one, but I do think these complaints apply to all 3. Alright, so the first thing is the characters. Which characters? All of them. I literally hated every character in these movies. I didn't like Indiana Jones at all. I hate Harrison Ford. I think he's a very phony looking actor. I've never liked him in anything I've seen him in. And even then, I've seen the auditions where Tom Selleck was auditioning for the role, and even then, I still didn't like it. I don't think he's funny. I don't think he's witty or anything like that. I just think he's a douchebag, and that's it. The girl, I don't even remember her name. She seemed nice and everything, but she was never very interesting. Shia LaBeouf's character sucked. Sean Connery is just always Sean Connery. I don't really like him very much either. All the villains were completely forgettable. I literally do not remember anything about any of them. All these characters just suck. This is the worst characters I've ever seen in movies. Another big thing is the fact that I felt this movie was trying to convince me that the Lost Ark is really out there somewhere. And you know what? Maybe it is. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know, because I don't know. But I honestly don't believe that there is. And this movie didn't really change my mind. And some people would say well, look at all the history. It makes sense. But we don't know if this history is accurate, because there's so many stories out there. There's so many different interpretations. There's so many so-called facts. We don't really know. And sure, you could do your own research and you could say, okay, well, these seem to be the most reliable sources and this story seems to make the most sense, but it may only make sense because this huge piece of the puzzle over here is missing. There's this guy, and he did this little short video about conspiracy theories, where he's making fun of all these conspiracy nuts and all that. But anyways, one of the examples he used in that was that Princess Leia was spotted on the bridge of the Death Star, standing right next to the Imperial commander moments before her home planet was destroyed, which is true. However, he leaves out the fact that she was not there willingly. And that little piece of information completely changes the context of that scene. Now, I'm not saying that all history is a lie or anything like that. All I'm saying is that there isn't anyone on the planet who can honestly say they know for a fact that they have all the information and that Indiana Jones is historically accurate. No one can say that. And that's the problem I have with historical facts. In science, we no longer have scientific facts. We have scientific theories, because sometimes new information comes along that disproves that. The same things happen in history. I don't think we should have historical facts. I think we should have historical theories. And I think that's a big problem in this film. The entire movie is based off of facts that no one can actually prove are indeed facts. But all in all, I just really think it sets a bad precedent when movies try to teach history. I don't think movies should try to sell us on facts. I think they should try to sell us on possibilities. A good example would be the newer Spider-Man movies. Instead of just going with the radioactive spider, it's now like a genetically altered spider, and they talk about DNA, and it's a lot more scientific. And they're trying to convince you that, with all this new technology, with all these new genetics, with all this new stuff, maybe someone could be Spider-Man. But they don't try to convince you that Spider-Man's really out there somewhere and we just don't know about it. Because that would be stupid. But the biggest problem I have with Indiana Jones is the fact that there is so much exposition in these movies. There's so many scenes where the characters are just standing around and they're like, oh, so many thousands of years ago, this person did this, and these people did this, and this symbol means this, and blah, blah, blah. And, and I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to tie it into history and all that stuff, and a lot of people find that interesting. However, I'm a writer myself, and when I first started writing, there's 3 friends of mine who all gave me the same piece of advice. And 2 of them actually have a bachelor's degree in English, and the other one is very well read. And all 3 of them told me, don't tell your audience what they need to know, show them. Like, why can't we see flashback sequences so we can actually see these historical events happen as opposed to having someone blankly explain it to us? Or, if you don't have the movie budget to do all these flashback sequences, why not do like little animations, when they're looking through the books or like when they're looking at the paintings on the wall? Do some like little animations or something so that there's something to go along with the narration. Or, better yet, why not do a short story in the beginning of the movie that kind of highlights what we're going to need to know? So that way, we don't need to have someone stop and explain it every 2 minutes. We, the audience, could put it together ourselves. Oh, I remember when they were talking about those people. Hey, I recognize that symbol. I know what that means. Etc., etc. Now, I realize you can't always do that. There are times in a movie where you do need to just stop and explain things. And I think that's fine if you do it like once or twice in a movie, but when you literally have scene after scene after scene after scene of just exposition, I find that very boring and very lazy writing.
So George wants you to fit all this history into the story.
Yep. It's going to take a lot of time and dedication to get it all right. Unless I just do it all through exposition.
Really. All of this history through exposition. You don't want to get creative or take advantage of the fact that this is a visual medium?
Nah, I'll just do the exposition. It's the easiest way to go. All Indiana Jones is someone reading you a history book accompanied with a few action sequences. I mean, how could you respect that? How could you think that's creative? How could you get engaged in that? But the biggest tragedy here, other than the fact that I've actually sat through 3 of these pieces of shit, is the music. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the Indiana Jones theme. I think John Williams is the greatest composer of all time, and this is one of his best. But that's the problem. I truly believe it is a cinematic tragedy that this great, amazing theme is associated with this diarrhea of a movie. I literally hate Indiana Jones that much. So that about does it for my list here. I'm that guy with a different opinion. Hope you enjoyed this video review, although I'm sure most of you didn't. Just remember one thing. You may hate me, but it's only because you know I'm right.